Check 1, 2. Testing audio for streaming 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting and the Planning Commission meeting. Call it to order and ask you to all please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Crystal, if you could help me with the roll call, please.
Okay, Commissioner Aker,
Here.
Commissioner Cahalan, here. Commissioner Schultz, here. Commissioner Krenke,
Here.
Commissioner Merrick,
Here.
Commissioner Jahinski,
Here.
Commissioner Hausman,
Here.
Mayor Adwell,
Present.
Scott Hussinger,
Here.
and Amy Barrows. Here.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. We will move right into number 4, approval of the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 27th Plan Commission meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to number 5, citizen comments on consent agenda items. Any citizens' comments for items on just the consent agenda? Seeing none, citizens' comments on the consent agenda are closed. We'll move on to number 6, the consent agenda. A and B.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented this evening.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. If you're on the consent agenda, you've been approved. You can stay with us till the end of the meeting to continue to wait for your name, but you've been approved and you can leave. So 2 people should be leaving.
Oh, they like it here.
They sit till the end of the meeting every now and then and we feel horrible. So, all right, we'll move on to number 7, public hearing. Public hearing number 1, topic. Text amendment, Article 4, 5, and 10 of Chapter 52, City of Delafield zoning ordinance, and Chapter 2, City of Delafield administrative ordinance. Location none. Applicant, City of Delafield Planning Commission. Matter, amend the text of Chapter 52, including Article 4, by amending the minimum lot size in each zoning district to recognize the lot size required for lots served by a private septic system, and by amending Section 52-110 permitted accessory uses in all residential districts. Amendments to Articles 4 and 5 are proposed to incorporate churches as conditional uses in P1 district and to remove model homes as conditional uses. Amendments to Article 10 are proposed, including Section 52-291, Zoning Board of Appeals, Section 52-292, Administration of Public Permits and Occupancy Permits, Section 52-293, Administrative Chapter and Administrator and Building Inspector's Duties, Section 52-294, Changes and Amendments, Section 52-295, Public Hearing Notice and Publications, and Section 52-296, Fees and Penalties. Amendments to Article 10 may result in modifications to Chapter 2, Administration. Other text amendments related to the topics specific to this notice may be proposed. Okay, that is public hearing number 1. Are there any citizens' comments that'd like to be made on anything else on the agenda, including the public hearing? Come on up. Uh-oh, now we're in trouble. We're in trouble.
Hold on, are you gonna speak about the public hearing? We should do the, okay, good. Do the public hearing.
Yeah, turn it on so it's red.
Okay. Linda Holton, 485 Lillian Court, City of Delafield. My first is a question on the protest petition. I don't think you're amending it tonight, but I'm not sure, so it's not clear to me if you are leaving it in place. There's a notation by Amy that it has to be withdrawn by the state by January of 2025. I'd like to know if you're leaving it in place till 2025, or if you're leaving it in place permanently, or addressing it at another time. Could you please clarify that in tonight's discussion? And so I'd have to ask if I can speak on it tonight, because I'm not clear on whether
Sure,
you're...
go ahead.
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was told that there's a rule of thumb that, or law that states a municipal ordinance cannot be less restrictive than a state law, but it can be more restrictive than the state law if you allow it. So I'm asking that when you get to that point, if you would, before you remove this tool that benefits all of us in all of our neighborhoods, could you please inquire if the state trumps municipal zoning autonomy? If the state does trump home rule, is it possible to provide an alternative to what you're removing and give the citizens a tool to replace the removal of the protest supermajority clause? What can I say? It's a powerful tool that's only been utilized once in the city's history, and to the success of the citizens in a case of an arbitrary rezoning. So I would hope that you would consider looking into it legally and discussing it at length before you change it. And the one information I received from the state was that there could possibly be a future problem in the downside. It's going to be allowed in the down zoning of what I believe is your personal property, not in the down zoning of an adjacent property. So I could foresee a future problem if you don't provide the citizens with a tool to deal with that. So I, again, would ask for a legal clarification on when the supermajority applies in down zoning property. Then the next item, just a few points, is the text amendment for accessory buildings. It looks like there's a notation that you may want to increase it to 3%. I personally think 2% is too big, and I'll tell you why. We have 4 acres. We have a 1,700 square foot footprint of our house. Second story gives us about 2,600 square feet. According to this amendment, we would be able to put up a 3,500 square foot accessory building that's bigger than our house. So I'm asking you on lots to consider that on lots smaller than 5 acres and smaller that you do a percentage reduction to 1% and retain the 2% for anything above 5 acres and do not increase it to 3%. I think it would visually be excessive. I think that the average house is 2,500 square foot or less, median houses in the United States, and if you're allowing 1,000 square feet above the size of the primary resident, I think it visually would be disruptive to any neighborhood, because this says in residential areas. And also, another suggestion would be to subtract the acreage that's already taken up by the primary resident before you figure on a percentage, to give it a little more like size to the actual home.
Can you repeat that comment, can you repeat the last comment?
Okay, that the footprint of the primary residence and say the outdoor living space, decks, patios, or whatever, if you subtract that from the total square footage of the lot before you start figuring in the square footage for the accessory building. I think that would help make it more proportional and less offensive to neighbors. You could end up with a lot of residential lots that look like houses with warehouses attached. So that's my concern. And the other, last thing would be also, retaining the 2% may not have been a problem in the past, but I can foresee a problem in the future with the size of that building. So, thank you.
Great, thank you very much for the comments, appreciated. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the public hearing? Anybody else like to speak to the public hearing? All right, the public hearing is now closed. Are there any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Okay, citizens' comments are now closed. We'll move on to number 9, unfinished business. Discussion and possible action on the following items. DELC 0807985021 3875 Kettle Court East. Owner Kettle Court Circle LLC. I'm reading the correct name. The one on your agenda is in error. Applicant John Barker. Applicant is requesting the site plan and appearance review approval for a construction of a storage building and related site grading. Amy, want to kick us off?
Okay, so the Plan Commission did consider this site plan request last month, so I won't go through the entire proposal. For the most part, it is very similar to what was presented last month. We can go over some of the changes. So he did update the building plans. I believe at the last meeting, the applicant discussed that he was not going to put a deck on the second story, so that's been removed. And then the overhead doors have been updated. We can go to those. And man doors and the final, this is, John, is this the final
This is, yes, the
request?
final, yes.
Okay. And then, hold on, still trying to find the pretty pictures. Okay, Mike. So here are the renderings of the building that he's proposing. So he's got the 3 overhead doors on the, what side of the building?
West.
West side of the building.
Correct.
That would be on, and then there aren't any on the other side. So in order to accommodate access to the lower level, he does have to construct several retaining walls. And then he will have, the emergency vehicles will be able to access the site. Then the other outstanding item was the stormwater management. They did submit a revised stormwater management plan. The engineers have reviewed that and updated their letter. There are still, outstanding items, but they do feel that the site is now designed to accommodate the stormwater management. So they should be able to accomplish all of the conditions while not impacting the site design.
I spoke to Chris today, Chris Jackson, and he said he should have that to you by the end of the week.
Okay. And then we have the tree mitigation. So this page that I have up on the screen, it's a little bit hard to see, shows all of the trees that are being removed. So at the end of the day, what he did, as you know, a couple of years ago, he came in and he did cut several trees down. He had to mitigate for that tree loss. So all of the trees that have been cut for this project were planted a couple of years ago. So he's not cutting any additional mature, long-standing trees. They were all new. Some of those trees have survived, some of them have not. And so he did use the approved plan and then compared that and then showed what he's going to plant. And he's removing 60, either replanting, removing, or relocating 60 trees and then adding 2 more trees. So 62 trees will replace 60 trees, if that helps. But a lot of them are going to just be relocated on the site. There's a lot of white pines on the far north end of the property. Those are all going to be replanted. I believe there's 3 missing that he will replace with new trees. Same with the crab apples. There's 3 dead crab apples, so 10 new trees will be planted, because 7 of them will be replaced and then 3 were dead. And then he's also planting arborvitae alongside the building, some ginger wine 9-bark, the white pines, and the crab apples.
Right.
Any questions on mitigation? Okay, then other than that, there really aren't any other changes. I do recommend approval of the site plan And that he has to comply with several conditions, one being that all the plans between the engineer and architect have to be reconciled. So there's still a little discrepancy with the retaining wall location we just want to make sure the landscape plan matches what's on the civil plans. And then the landscape plan, there's an inventory, there's a table on these plans. It's just missing the deciduous trees that are being removed, and I just want to make sure that the plans show what's actually on site, so they're going to update those plans. The building's got to comply with all zoning and building code requirements, so Scott will review that. And then the stormwater requirements and conditions of the engineering report dated October 18th shall be complied with, and then in addition to the issuance of a permit, an addendum to the stormwater maintenance agreement will be required, and that's got to go to Common Council for review and approval. And then a developer's agreement may be required. And then if he is extending sewer, which it sounds like he will be, then he'll need to get review and approval from the city and Delhard and pay any connection fees. And I believe at the last month's meeting, we talked about him possibly connecting, so applicant recently purchased the site that's occupied by SEH, putting in a connection point, a path. He's not going to do that anymore. Anything I'm missing, John?
No, you did great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Everything looks great.
Any questions for the applicant?
A usual concern is planting arborvitaes. Do you have some out there now that the deer aren't eating?
I do, actually. I get them from a guy in Fredonia. These are beautiful. The ones that I'd planted at the smaller building down the street next to Caliber Collision, they look beautiful. And what I've done is I've taken netting that's about 6 foot tall, and it's kind of woven mesh, and you can see right through it. In fact, from any distance, you don't even know it's there. I did it at my house too, and I just put it in with PVC or actual conduit, spray it black, and then put it in like every 6 feet, and it nets it so they don't get into it. The other ones, it's funny, they've got a bunch of arbs that are on the east side of the building, and they don't touch them. I think it's one that they just don't like, because usually they'll tear them apart, but
Yeah.
these are, I think, a certain breed that don't. The ones that I was presenting to plant, they look amazing. They're huge. They're like 16 feet tall. They've got a like 13, 14 caliber inch base. They're beautiful. They look really, really nice. So, and that would be on that peninsula that you see coming off of the larger building. You'll see, it looks like kind of a black peninsula coming out. There's 7 that are about 16 feet tall, and there's 3 that are about 12 feet tall. And so
Great.
they look amazing. They really did it looks really good. I actually planted with a buddy of mine, and it's beautiful. So, yeah. But yeah, and as far as the retaining walls go, those are obviously my specialty. You've seen it at the end of the street there, and it'll be all outcropping walls. And the discrepancy Amy had seen between the landscape plan and the civil engineering plans. I had talked to Chris Jackson. He's the civil engineer at CJ, and he's the one doing the stormwater management. He and I discussed, and I said, well, let's make the wall a little less aggressive, not a big 7 foot and then an 8 foot to get the elevation difference. So I broke it up into 3. So I stepped it like 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet. It'll be a nicer look, real soft, and it won't be some big, huge wall. And it'll be, I think, pretty nice looking in terms of just creating that transition between the grades. So it's a pretty easy deal. So, but yeah, that's about it.
Looking for a motion?
Yep, looking for a motion, if there aren't any other questions.
I'll move approval of the recommendation pursuant to the points of the city planner.
I'll second.
Is there a list in there that we should read
Yes.
off?
1 through 5.
Yeah, let's go ahead and make that part of the motion.
Okay. Pursuant to the city planner's points as noted, 1 through 5.
Gotcha.
Second, okay with that? Okay. Is there any discussion?
I'll just say, love the buildings you've been doing.
Thank
and
you.
The concern for the city and that. Probably no more moves for the same trees.
Oh, yeah.
Future
No, it can't be. Well, I mean, it's funny because I never really thought about putting a building down there, and then I'm looking at them like, and, you know, I bought the SEH property, and I thought about, you know, maybe tearing it down right away or within a year or two and putting up a big 80,000 square footer, and I'm like, let's just wait and see what the economy holds out like. I mean, I could do it, and I know somebody would buy my other building like that, and it wouldn't set me back a nickel, but it's like, let's do this. This'll solve the problems and allow me to have some freedom with some storage of all the accessory stuff we've got. So this really solves a problem, and I think it's good for a while. So, but thank you guys. I really appreciate the listening to all of it and going through the motions, so.
Thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for improving the city of Delafield. Okay, we'll move on to 10 new business. ADELC 079290 Oakwood Drive, owner St. John's Estates LLC, applicant Dave Borlis. Image 360, applicant is requesting permanent signage to install a residential development identification sign for the purpose of marketing the lots at St. John's Estates. The applicant's here. Come on up, sir. Kurt, come on up and give us your name and address, please.
Name's Kurt Bose, B-O-O-S, on behalf of Aspire Homes. Address is 3415 North 127th Street, that's in Brookfield.
Sounds good. You want to push that button so you get the mic to turn on? There you go.
Megan Crucius with Aspire Homes.
And your address?
740 Hartbrook Drive, Heartland.
Sounds good. Amy, you want to help us out?
Sure. Okay, so the applicant is proposing a sign at the entrance of the new road that's proposed along Oakwood Road. The sign will be there for a short period of time just to advertise the lots while they're being sold. The sign will be no more than 20 square feet in size. It's 4 by 5, 4 feet tall, 5 feet wide. The code does limit subdivision identification signage to 20 square feet. The sign will need to be outside of the road right-of-way of Oakwood, and then the interior road won't be dedicated until the sign is removed and it's done, but the intent is it will be off to the side of the constructed proposed road, even for construction purposes. And it will be constructed, it'll be a post and panel sign. Mike, I don't know if you could put that on the screen, that would be great. It'll be affixed to wood posts with painted white U-channel metal posts, just because it is so temporary. The overall height will not exceed 8 feet. In fact, I believe they've determined it'll be more like 6 feet in height.
Page 60, Mike.
And then, I guess that's all I really have to add, and I recommend approval of the signage, subject to it being installed outside of the road right-of-way of Oakwood Road and prior to the dedication of River Oaks Boulevard, or January 1st, 2025, whichever occurs earlier, so just over a year. And the overall height of the sign, including the post, shall not exceed 8 feet in height.
It's a mouthful.
And it's not lit, is that correct?
And it's not lit.
Not lit.
Okay. All right, I'll move to approve the sign as presented.
I'll second.
Alrighty, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. That was pretty easy. Thanks for coming. Okay, 10B, DELC 0798953-601 Poplar Path, owner 3 Migos LLC, applicant Delafield Family Dental, applicant Rose Hartung, Image 360, applicant requests approval for permanent signage.
Okay.
Name and address?
Michelle Kelly, 601 Poplar.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Okay, so the applicant is proposing their signage. They'll come back next month for the business plan of operation. As if you've driven by. It looks like they're almost done with the site and ready to open up. The sign, so if you'll remember, the city created the CBD zoning district, or CBD4 zoning
Your
district.
mic, Amy?
Should be on.
Maybe you gotta get a little closer.
He wants you closer.
It's more than 2 feet away.
Oh, well, I've got a lot of real estate here, a lot of material. Okay, so the property zone CBD4, when that district was created, there was a limitation of signs not exceeding 12 square feet. The idea there is this is still a mix of residential and commercial, and to keep that scale pretty minor. So the applicant is a little setback from Genesee Street, and in order to see it, they would prefer a larger sign, but they did submit the signage that would comply with the code. It is the height of the size of a single shingle siding row, I guess you could say. And they're just worried they aren't gonna see that. So they submitted that sign. That sign is just under 12 square feet. The lettering is 10 inches, 10 and a half inches high by 160 inches wide. So first, they're asking for that approval, and then alternatively, they would like the Plan Commission to consider amending the text of the zoning code to allow a larger sign, which would essentially make up 2 of those rows of shake siding, and the letters would be 16 inches high and 240 inches wide. And that would be equal a 26.7 square foot sign. And I guess with that, one important thing to know, if you were so inclined to amend the code, downtown signage is limited to 25 square feet when it's wall mounted, so you probably wouldn't want to exceed the downtown size requirements. They are proposing gooseneck lighting to light the signage as well. The number of those gooseneck lightings, I did get a couple different responses, so Michelle, I don't know if you know.
Probably like 2 or 3, depending on how it lights. It's most likely like we'd center them like in the middle and have it downlit, so just so you can see this on the building.
Amy, just for comparison to the 25 square foot, do we know what that,
I
what the
think
one
it's
that you?
26, but I mean, we can make it smaller. That was just what they gave
Oh.
me.
Right, this is just 26 and a half, 26.7 square feet, so I would certainly think they could meet the 25 square feet. And that would probably be a, 12 or 25, it is
Probably like a 14
twice as
inch
much,
letter
but
of
it,
some kind.
it would match the downtown requirements. And they are proposing the same sign on the west side and the south side of the building, so facing Poplar and Genesee Street.
How big is the Welcome to City of Delafield sign as far as square footage? I mean, I think this competes or exceeds what the welcome is, which is right across the street, and it's not lit.
I think there is a light in it, isn't there? Mm-hmm. There's a light on it.
City of Delafield sign is lit? Okay.
It's lit.
It's see-through.
Uplit.
It's see-through. But my initial impression is that the zoning has changed, as we changed it, was to be the mix of the commercial and residential. And in exactly this particular intersection too, if you've gotten off that clover leaf, you're not for lack of time to read a sign, if you're headed west and getting off the interstate, nor are you when you're heading into town and your speed limit's dropped to 25. I'd prefer the sign as initially proposed and compliant with the zoning, is my personal opinion. I don't think you're gonna miss customers with the sign as initially designed.
It's not. It was more for aesthetics, because I thought it was going to look odd, being as small as it is.
And is that font and all that is just for representative purposes?
You're not on, Dan.
Sorry. The font, is that just for representative size purpose, or is that actually?
No, it's essentially it's a bold font, like kind of a market style type letter.
So is what you're supplying us actually what you're going to put up, or
Yeah,
there's a
I mean, that's
living-
essentially what we would put up. It's just a matter of like the lettering, the
Well,
height
it
of
is
it.
what you're gonna put up,
It
or
is
it
what we're gonna,
isn't?
no, it is what we're gonna put up, but it's
Okay.
like, it's a bold black letter is basically what we're putting up. So the problem is because the shake is so, like, it's small. So, like, to lay it out on the shake and get the height and everything, I just thought it was gonna look odd with a big white and the small, which is why we gave you the option of the larger signage, so you could see it.
So, and those letters, they'll be individual black acrylic letters attached to the wall of the building, right? Directly attached to the wall of the building?
And then your lights will be located above these letters?
They'll be above shining down, so it's
And
not
how
gonna
many
shine out.
lights exactly are you putting in?
I think it's gonna be 2 or 3. I don't know how it lays out. I asked Ross about it to try and figure it out, but he, like, at least 2. It'd be like kind of centered, off-centered in the middle of them all.
Well, it's hard for us to approve 2 or 3.
I know, I don't know, because I don't know how they were gonna be light, and I've asked him 3 times about it, and I get very limited responses, unfortunately. But I can have a better answer for you next month, I know, because I have to come back.
Yeah, I just asked because, again, we're not looking for Las
I'm saying
Vegas.
at least 2, and I would say between the letters, like between the words, I would say at least 2.
Yeah, I wasn't asking about the lights. I just was questioning, we're not looking for Las Vegas cool, but doesn't it look kind of plain Jane?
I don't really have a whole lot of options. I can't put a sign out in front of the building, and I can't do anything else, so the only thing I can do is put a sign
Right there.
on my building. I don't want it to look awkward, so I was trying to, like, blend with the style of the building, and, we have a coastal farmhouse vibe to it.
Yeah.
And the farmhouse style of lettering is typically just a bold black letter of some kind, or you could do something colored, but I don't really want color. It doesn't go with the rest of the scheme of the office. So,
Did you consider stacking the words?
I have, and it looks even worse. Trust me, I've done this about 7 ways to Sunday to try and make it look decent.
Because frankly, the different sizes just make it look louder. I'm not a
They've tried
I'm not a fashion designer. I'm just
Yeah.
This looks like it sort of looks like a label in a presentation as opposed to a sign. You have a beautiful
That's where
building.
That's
You have
where
a
I was
beautiful
going with
building.
it.
You know?
It's
Kind of looks
more-
like Arial font 12.
Yeah, I mean,
know,
it's supposed to be like a market font, but this is what he gave me when I asked him for it. And
so
then it
this
would
would
have
be-
the downlighting.
And this would be as you're negotiating. I mean, or shopping this is. Would these be individual letters?
They're mounting
And the
the individual letters. They suggested possibly because of the shake to put it on a backer board
That's what I was-
and
Yeah.
mount it that way,
On a
so it'd be
board.
on like a.
But the idea that these would stay
Just trying to
straight
install
would be
each
so.
letter
Well, the
perfectly
problem,
straight
the other
on
problem we
on
found with the
side
backer board is
shingles.
because of the length, they would have to do 2 boards. So then you're gonna have an odd seam in the middle of it, and that, to me, that's gonna stand out more. So that's why we were looking for the single mounted.
I'm
Yeah, I-
curious
I
about,
would think the seam, you wouldn't see it, because of the way they would put it together. I just think, I agree,
is-
I think something in the back of it
Yeah.
would help set it off.
I mean, they can do a backer board, but the backer board would be white, so it's not gonna be much different than the shake, it's just gonna separate the shake from behind it. The problem is the seam, and even when he laid the backer board, I could still see it. It looked weird, like, because you're getting a seam up the center and the backer board's larger than the letters. So that's why,
I'm just curious about the size from the standpoint of if you were selling an impulse item, I could understand size, it gets people's attention and I'll go in. This is just my perspective. Most people probably know, they're not happening across the dental facility. I understand something that would cause them to say, oh, this is the location. I'm just curious as to your thoughts on that relative to the larger versus the smaller letters. How necessary is it?
the larger letters, it's not. I mean, it was just for me, from an aesthetic standpoint, I thought the larger letter would look a little more better, which is why I gave you the option. I gave you the original size of what the city allows for that area, which is fine. If you guys only approve that, I'm okay with it. The aesthetics of the the signage, because of the way the letters fall on the shake, I felt it would be a little bit better if it was a little larger, but I wasn't asking for a ton of difference. And he actually did it a little above and beyond what I was looking for, so if it was a smaller letter or someplace in between, I'd be fine with that too. I'm okay with whatever.
So if this was put on a board, that would be the dimension of the sign, right? Which would mean these letters would have to get smaller. It'd be the size of the board, right?
I did talk to the sign, I mean, if they were able to come up with something that matched the siding of the building really closely, so you could hardly tell it was there, like, it's not really, it's not pointing out the sign detail. It doesn't have a border or anything like that. We could probably exclude it. I think that the city has, I think we actually did that
Did
on
that
a
for the
recent sign.
belfry? We excluded background
Oh, yeah.
for the belfry.
I do remember.
But it, and
That's
they,
right.
you know, he said they would paint it white, the same color as the
I just
siding.
think that would look better.
Tim, I'm with you. I'm on shaky ground making marketing and fashion comments. But it's an awesome building. And I just feel like, gosh, go get a better sign company to give you some better ideas, right? Because it
I
just
mean,
looks.
I've laid it out every way to Sunday. The problem is I don't really want to stack the letters and.
Can you have a marketing firm or a sign firm do it for you?
What do you mean?
Hire a marketing or a sign firm to come up with a plan for you.
I mean, to be
She
honest,
does.
I do. This is a sign company. I mean, this is what I was looking for and what I wanted on the building was something just very straightforward with a name. I didn't want to have to do a logo or anything like that.
So,
And I did talk to the sign, because I had the same comment. It's just very, very simple.
Part of it is because the name is so long, I'm very limited to what I can put on it. Like, I don't have a design I can put on or a logo because the name is so long, and if you do the logo, it shrinks it so much more, you will never read it. It would be super confusing.
And that is what the sign, I'm like, can you put a black outlined tooth on there or something like that? What kind of cool is that? Anything they do, like, it just, there's not enough size.
No.
Well, maybe we've given enough feedback on this sign, and since she's coming back next month for the business plan of operation, maybe she can just resubmit her sign in its final form with the final number of lights, and it'll be a lot easier to move forward next time, and then this time you got the feedback. How about that?
I don't know what you want, though. That's the problem. Do you want me to put a board behind it?
I think so.
I would say.
Well, what about size? Maybe just start with size. Is there?
It has to
are you
follow the
sticking with
code.
12?
I don't think
It
bigger
has
is
to follow
better.
the code.
I don't think bigger
I
is
think
better.
the one that's one shingle wide is good. That'll work.
Okay.
If you can just, if it doesn't need a logo, but it just feels like Arial font 12. It's probably unfair. I know it is, but
My thing is like if you look at, I guess with like the farmhouse style of home, like building it is.
Yeah.
Like if you look at like Magnolia Farms or Magnolia Silos, like their signs are very much a market font, which is essentially what I'm looking for.
okay.
And like just the wording across. Like some of it is framed out and everything, but I have such a limitation to what I can do for a size of I mean, it's either gonna look like a big block in the center of the building, which to me is gonna look stupid.
Yeah.
Or I just have the market letters going across. Because it's not, it's a long name. Like I've thought about rebranding and trying to change the name to something else, but it's hard because it's, Delafield, and I don't want to necessarily do that.
If you could maybe ask for a sample that you could show us of
The letter.
someone tackling the same, him tackling this, or her tackling the same challenge and how it would look, I mean, that'd help us a lot.
But just like the
Like
layout.
saying, hey, well, you're mentioning specific examples of farmhouse with and without borders and with and without sign backings. So it sounds like you've seen them and liked them, not liked them, but like find one you like that is an example of the
Well,
work
the
they've done
borders
and
are-
maybe show.
The borders are, I mean, they usually border it with like a black frame or something like that if it's bordered. But then you're limiting my sign size even more because now I'm down to 12 square feet and trying to fit that in there too because it's a different color.
I guess maybe what you're saying, Tim, is whatever you guys come up with this final,
Yeah.
if you can find a similar property that this signage it did very close.
Well, you guys have the sign right on the building downtown here with the white building that's farmhouse style right next to Element Style or whatever. She's got just the name across the top.
Okay, so take a picture of that and bring it when
Okay.
you come back.
Okay.
Just to make it, you know what I mean? Just to make it, because it probably doesn't give it probably a fair shake as to what it really would look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's the style of font and what it is and laying it out, but yeah.
And if you have a backer board and it matches the color of the paint,
Yeah.
then you're allowed to have it. I would think that would make installation, we won't figure it into the signage square footage.
Okay.
And it should make it much easier to install.
Okay. I mean, it's not my issue, it's theirs. That's what I'm paying them for.
Until letters are crooked.
Falling off or falling. And that's a really good point. Just keep that in mind,
Yeah.
individual letter.
I was
You've got
okay
a lot
with-
of them there. If one starts tilting or falls off,
Yeah.
you know.
I was okay with them putting a board behind it. I just didn't know, like, because there's a seam in it, it's gonna fall like right between, it's gonna fall in the
I
middle of the
think
letters.
there's technology or a product you can buy that doesn't have a seam.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I
I
just
think
can't
from
imagine
He
that
said the way
that's,
the boards come, because of the length, they come in like, I think it was 8 or 10
find
foot
a different
sections.
supplier for the
Yeah.
boards.
That, I mean,
I mean, I don't know what
that's
to
just
tell
what I'm
you.
going off of, because we had big, long conversations for months about this.
Trees
Dude,
grow
you've done
longer
s-
than this
And like, I could definitely go
Fun
find a longer board
string you
somewhere,
got
but
here.
You've done so much great work and you've got a beautiful building.
I know.
don't
I'm
wanna get-
trying.
I don't wanna get
I'm
wrapped
like, I
around the
just don't
axle
have the
over us, so-
Let's
capability
put the
of
jewel of the
sign.
name on there nicely.
I know. No, I mean, ideally it would be something with a pretty little frame around it, but then my sign gets even smaller. You'll never read it on the building. So, okay. So
Okay.
basically come back with a drawing with the board behind it.
Yep, give it to Amy and we'll put it in the packet next time and hopefully it'll be lickety-split next time.
Totally fine. And I'll try to get him to put the lights on. He was like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, oh my God.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to 10C. DELC 0798011, 638 Milwaukee Street, owner Delafield Properties LLC, and Milnita LLC, applicant Andrea Johnson, representative. Applicant is requesting site plan and appearance review for exterior window, door, and awning improvements to the property. Is the applicant here? Come on. Oh. Is the applicant here? Okay.
She's
What?
been waiting to get on this agenda.
Oh, wow.
All
Can we
right.
circle back if she shows up in the next?
We can come back if she
half
shows
hour,
up.
hour?
Okay, we'll move on to 10D, DLC 0798094, 736 Wells Street, DLC 07980988007, 737 Division Street, DLC 07980988006, 731 Division Street, DLC 07980988005, 723 Division Street, owner Barron Properties LLC, Robert Barron, James Barron, and Richard Barron, applicant Chris Miller, Miller Marriott. Applicant is requesting an approval of a certified survey map to combine the lots.
Okay. So.
Name and address?
Oh,
Chris Miller, Miller Marriott Construction, 249 Pauling Avenue, Heartland, Wisconsin.
Welcome back.
Glad to be back.
Okay, so the applicant was here last month or a few months ago?
Maybe like 5 or 6 weeks.
He was recently in front of the Plan Commission for a proposed office building. He will be coming back shortly, perhaps in November.
He really loves the city of Delafield.
Yes.
We really like Delafield.
In the meantime, he's proposing to combine 4 legal lots of record, and as part of that, he's proposing to vacate a portion of that alley and a portion of Lake Street. And that is actually in the process right now. It was introduced by Common Council last month. It's on the next agenda item to adopt the resolution, and then it has to go back to Common Council for a public hearing. So the certified survey map, again, is simply to combine the lots. There are a few conditions, surveyor conditions and engineer conditions. The ones that I just want to point out include that there is a sanitary sewer lateral that does benefit the adjacent property to the west on the south side that faces Division Street. So the applicant does need to address that lateral before vacating the easement to make sure that that other property has proper access. So they're working through that right now. And then just a few easement conditions from the surveyor. And then, all sheets need to be signed and stamped, and the owner needs to reflect the owner at the time of CSM recording. And then also the engineer has asked that, that as part of the certified survey map, that the owner agree to relocate the trail in what is left for the right-of-way of Lake Street. So that will be part of the site plan review and development. We just want to make sure that, as approving the certified survey map, that they are going to agree to do it before suddenly that becomes vacated and it's no longer an opportunity. So with that said, there's a recommendation to approve the certified survey map to combine the lots provided the alley and a portion of Lake Street are properly vacated, so it will not be recorded until they are vacated. And with an agreement from the owner that the trail will be located to the east within the remaining right-of-way of Lake Street and all surveyor conditions being addressed prior to common council consideration.
Should I
Anything else
comment?
to add?
You
So,
might just get a vote.
okay. Fair enough. Why make it complicated, right?
Is there any questions for the applicant? If there aren't any, I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move to recommend the approval of the certified survey map to combine the lots as proposed.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes.
There you go.
You can talk next month.
Thank you. I'm.
Unless you want to.
Thank you for the reminder, Ken.
Okay, we will move right along to 10E, recommendation to adopt resolution number 2023-15, a resolution of the Common Council to vacate and discontinue an alley with public right-of-way and portions of public right-of-way for Lake Street pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 62.235. The matter was introduced at the October 2nd, 2023 Common Council meeting, and a public hearing on the resolution is set for the November 20th, 23 Common Council meeting. Amy?
So in the packet, you'll see the exhibits that show the areas that are proposed to be vacated. The one comment, the exhibits do have the town range backwards, so that is being it already has been resubmitted, and that will be part of the, when they come to Common Council for the public hearing, that'll be corrected. So it's just a typographical error. Other than that, I mean, I don't, Mike, if you want to put the screen, oh, it is on. So this is the area of the alley that's being vacated. It's 495 square feet. The portion of the alley that's on the 3 south lots has already been vacated. So this is just to address the north lot. The property to the northwest that exists, they will still have the alley. And that owner did come in and ask me, wanted to make sure that alley would remain in place, and they will still have it. And then let's see if I can find the Lake Street. So the 3 properties to the south, when the Barron brothers came in and they were gonna, they had an applicant proposing the condominium development. They already vacated Lake Street on that south half, or half of Lake Street on that south half. So, Chris is just proposing to vacate it on the north half.
So the applicant's the city of Delafield here, so unless you have questions, we're looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the subject alley, the vacation of the subject alley.
And Lake Street, half of Lake
Oh,
Street.
I'm sorry, yeah, and the half of
Even
Lake
half in
Street.
here, but-
I'll second.
And that's the adoption of resolution 2023-15, is that?
Yes.
Yes, 2023-15.
You got that in the motion?
Can we be a little clearer on that?
Yep.
So,
Why don't you start over, Dan?
I'm trying to get to that resolution number.
The year in 15.
There it is. Okay, motion is to approve the vacation of the subject alley and half of Lake Street as proposed with resolution 2023-15.
And I will second that.
With the correction, town range correction.
Yes,
so
with the town
amending
range.
with the town range
correction.
correction, okay.
I should take notes.
And Ed, you're good with the
I'm
amendment?
good with that, yes.
Everybody happy? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to 10F, DELC 07930210002, 705 Genesee Street, owner 705 Genesee Street LLC, applicant Ryan Coffey, Elevated Identity. Applicant is requesting site plan and appearance review, permanent signage, and multi-tenant signage for the installation of a clock, freestanding signage, and tenant signage. Gentlemen, could share your names and addresses?
Ryan Coffey with Elevated Identity, 1 Parker Place, Janesville, Wisconsin.
Dan Marcus, Hendricks Commercial Properties, 525 Third Street.
Turn the mic, press, both of you, make the red lights on. Make the red light go on.
Yeah, turn yours on.
Turn yours on. Here you go.
There you
Thank
go.
Red lights on, not off.
Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah,
warning.
light's a good-
Warning, you can be heard.
And it's in a position you can't see it.
Yeah. So Ryan Coffey, Elevated
Well
Identity,
designed.
Janesville, Wisconsin.
Dan Barkas, Hendricks Commercial Properties, 525 Third Street, Beloit, Wisconsin.
Thank you very much. Amy, kick us off.
Okay. So the applicants are here regarding the Grain downtown, the buildings that are under construction. And they're proposing site plan and signage and multi-tenant signage. So we can start with the simplest of them all, which is the clock. So this would be site plan approval for the clock. So the skinny portion that'll be at the angle in the southeast corner of the east building, they're proposing a clock on the top of that corner. So that's not considered signage. That would be a site plan review item. I don't know if can you see it on the, I guess it's easiest to see on the corner TV. Any comments or questions regarding the clock?
Can you just visually, it's awfully hard to tell in this picture unless I'm missing one. Can you give us a better description of the clock? We got one at plan staff, but can you help the planning commissioners here? My recollection is the hands and stuff are off. Well, I don't want to misstate something, so if you could do that, please.
I can speak a little bit on their behalf, and Dan, jump in if you have more knowledge, but I believe the intent was to have the clock would have very dim halo lighting around the face of it, and I believe that's it. I believe the numerals light up. Maybe the hands themselves do, but I don't recall exactly what was spec'd, to be honest.
I don't have anything else to
Nothing
add.
else?
It's pretty straightforward, simplistic clock, so.
Yeah, it's pretty, from the description I heard, it felt attractive. It wasn't going to be bright or ominous. It was going to be subtle, and it was going to blend in with the building. It was, I believe, side lighted. Was that, am I remembering that right, Amy?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they're saying just a little dim. Well, the application, and I've never heard of this, says that there's flash lighting on the signage too, and so I'm not sure what that means with flash lighting.
Flash lighting. Is that what that is? Did you see the cut sheet?
It's not, it just, there's a note on here that says you'll use flash lighting.
Yeah, I don't have
Oh, I'm sorry, wash lighting.
Oh.
It looks like a really small, a real little small thing that faces the signs. So
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
know if that's
coming-
what you're doing on the clock too.
No, the clock is internally illuminated, so it's
Okay.
around the perimeter of the circle, and it just kind of floods into the center. It's a real dim light that illuminates the face.
So hopefully that you can better visualize what the actual clock would look like.
We can send us back. I know Dan's coworker has an actual spec, so we can send it over.
Yeah, if you're interested in seeing a cut sheet, we can provide that.
Okay. Then we have the permanent signage, so we can start with, they are proposing a freestanding sign. Let's see. 106. Okay, so this is just outside of the right-of-way of Main Street. So you can see on the plan on the screen, it'll be perpendicular to the street, so you can see it, and it'll be two-sided, so you'll see it both ways, east and westbound traffic. The sign will be 12 feet tall and 10 feet 6 inches wide, and it will include posts. And again, it will be double-sided, and it will have the name, The Grain on it. Let's see, I'll go to this close up. The sign would accommodate the upper level tenants, so the intention is the lower level tenants will have wall tenant signage, and they'll be part of the multi-tenant program. But the other upper level tenants will just have their nameplate on this sign. The posts and background will include Douglas fir veneer with a color to match the building. And then otherwise, the sign is made of fabricated aluminum and metal. And then they'll have matching lettering, and borders will be matching for each of the tenant signage for this particular sign. And those tenant rectangles are 8 inches tall by 3 feet, 9 inches wide. And they're each 12, there'll be 12 of them. Any questions on that? And I don't believe there's any illumination on this sign, is that correct?
I believe it was to be spotlighted from the ground,
Okay.
but it's not internally illuminated, no.
Does the Plan Commission have any concerns or want any additional information on that?
Is this for both buildings?
This is the freestanding sign is just on Main Street. You mean advertising both buildings? Or, oh,
Well, it's the tenants in, she's saying, is it the tenants in one building or the tenants in both buildings?
Yeah,
Would be the office tenants combined from both buildings.
okay.
okay, any
Now,
questions?
Question unrelated directly to the signs, because I haven't been on the planning commission before all this started. And this started before COVID, right? The process of building. And
Almost
developing.
5 years ago.
Yeah. So COVID and commercial real estate has radically kind of changed, right? It's not my area of expertise, but are you on track to fill this with tenants as planned?
Now, remember, these are the sign guys for the
okay.
most part.
No, Dan is with Hendricks.
Okay.
Yeah. I know you're with Hendricks, right?
I am. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can you comment just on that? Again, I don't have the history that a lot of folks here do, so it's more of just a curiosity of the direction of filling it up once we're ready to go.
So you're asking, what I'm hearing you ask is how many tenants we have signed up and how many that we're chasing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have 3 executed leases to date. And that's, I think I'm okay to talk about those because they're known, synthetic. And Brunch. And let's see.
I always forget the name of the other one myself.
I'm sorry.
3 out of, you're talking about the first floor, right?
I think we're close to being almost 70% leased.
Okay. On the first
Total.
floor or the whole?
The whole building.
The whole building.
All-
Okay.
Both buildings.
That's what I was curious about. Thank you.
Yeah, we have leases out or letters of intent out for almost 90% of the property.
Good.
So,
Good.
yeah, we've made some really good headway on it, and our leasing team's done a great job. So.
Thank you. Little diversion, sorry, Amy.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep that diversion going with just a reminder. We've only seen one business plan of operation so far, considering you're that far along with the building. Please remind your tenants that they need to come in to the city to get a business plan of operation.
Yeah, staff and I have had that discussion, so our leasing team has been reminded of that, and they will come in.
All right. Any other questions on the freestanding sign? Anyone?
No.
It's good.
Okay. Then we've got the, let's see here, window signage. So on the west building, there'll be window signage on the south elevation on both sides of the entrance door. That signage will be 2 feet 6 inches wide by 2 feet 9 inches tall, and it'll be attached by an aluminum pan painted to match the trim of the window. Each of the signs will be 6.87 square feet total, and then each tenant panel will be 7 inches tall. And then same thing, that sign will consist of the same lettering and same Douglas fir veneer painted to match the building.
So the exact same template exterior, for the signs, and just different colors and logos on the signs themselves, or?
I think these, my understanding is these are all black and,
Yeah, it'll be uniform font, uniform color.
Nice, okay.
It'll match almost identical to the ground sign.
You're way too easy. Yeah.
You're consistent. We want to
And-
keep a nice theme throughout.
Yeah, no, good.
then on the, east building, the west elevation of the east building will also have this small tenant signage, 7.3 total square feet.
Cool.
Attached to the wall. That's it for window, any questions on that signage? Okay.
Signage is often in the eye of the beholder, but I really like the strategy and the fonts and the locations and the size myself.
So that's, what I've gone through so far is their permanent signage, that they're asking for permission to construct that, have that under construction. Then they're also proposing multi-tenant approval, and then each of the tenants would need to come in for individual approval. And that is, so this is the south elevation of the west building. They're gonna propose 4 tenant signs, and they are to accommodate the first floor tenants. And then each of those signs, they're kind of providing a couple of different scenarios. They may either be, this first sheet of 2 inches in height by 12.5 inches wide, or,
Sorry, 2 foot by 12 foot. They all equal the 25 square feet allowed.
oh, what did I say?
You said 2 inches.
Oh, I'm sorry. 2 feet in height by 12 and a
Like
half
to squint.
feet in width. Yes, they all equal 25 square feet, which is what is allowed. And then there's another scenario where they would be 3 feet in height by 8 feet and 4 inches in width, and then a more, square, I guess, 5 feet in height by 5 feet in width. My question on all 3 of these is, would they all end up being the same, or would you have a mix of the different shapes
The
possibly?
intent is to have a mix based on what the tenant logo is, what the name is. If you have a super long name, you're gonna need the linear layout versus a short name, something in between, or more of the box.
Right, and with when it comes to the retail tenant base, you don't know what kind of logo or what they're going to have or need or want, and it's just really important to create that variety and those options, because if you're doing small, a national tenant or even a smaller mom and pop tenant, they all have their specific signage needs and wants, and this creates a little bit of flexibility to work with them.
And so there's 3 formats, correct, for for these awning tenant signs, and they're
Right.
all in the same frame style, right? It's just the dimensions change, but otherwise, the structure that holds the signs is identical. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I mean, they're gonna have a background panel
Yeah.
with their lettering on it.
Right.
So it does say, it does say in here on these signs that you might not have the matching colors, that it would be up to the individual tenant to decide based on their preference, but that it would meet the downtown color palette. So these signs are a little bit different than the other ones, and that they may not match, correct?
Right, there is gonna be flexibility for the tenant to use colors as long as they can choose from the downtown color palette.
Yeah.
So we would adhere to that.
But the frame is identical, right? I remember you guys mentioning that in our meeting. Is that still the case, or?
Yeah, I mean, all the backgrounds will be uniform color.
Yeah. Okay.
Material, color, different sizes with different color logos, obviously.
Okay.
Is that in the application? The uniform materials and
I don't
background
think
color?
that part is clear, because it just said background panel and sign elements will be consistent with the downtown color palette. So it would be nice to just,
I mean, assuming that there's gonna be room for background colors behind logos, as long as there's some border to keep these kind of consistent, I think that would be pretty sharp to keep that.
to keep the border or the background and border.
Well, they mentioned, so just contemplating logos and the variety that you're gonna get approached with, to maintain, like, let's say you pick eggshell as the background color, that's not gonna work for everybody. But I mean, if there's something that's uniform about the signs, I mean, we're looking really for some sort of edging or material or consistency of the signs, because we're getting variety of sizes. We're not really interested in having like, you know, angled single acrylic letters across, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Continuity.
Yeah, exactly. It's like anything that you can instill some continuity between it. But you mentioned the same materials, so these would be, your intent is to have these essentially silk screened or printed on a similar flat material, or you don't know?
No, I mean, the background panel will be constructed of most likely aluminum with obviously a paint color to match the downtown palette. What the tenant does with that, obviously you guys would have to approve.
They would just occupy the space over it.
Occupy the space. So if there are individual letters and logos mounted to that, it's gonna vary, but the background panel will have a uniform appearance.
I'm trying to just delicately frame how to allow some freedom without making it kind of carnival-y, you know what I mean? Allowing that to happen, not that you'd ever want that.
And I think they feel that if they stick to the downtown color palette, they're
Yeah, right.
accomplishing that.
Are you looking for the same frame then?
I'm only saying that because I thought that's what you had said in our
I
staff
mean,
meeting.
you're
That
talking
wa-
about
That was your preference.
contained within the same background material and sizes of these three options, right? So
Correct.
you've got this frame, three options for the size frame, background, and they're able to occupy any space inside of that.
Correct.
Does that make sense? I mean, is that good?
We're all
or
saying the same
You look concerned.
Well, when I hear frame, I'm thinking of like a window frame.
No,
a
yeah,
picture
yeah,
frame.
same.
But I think what you're really, what I'm hearing now is that it is the.
Oh, you need to talk into the mic. Mike is
It
getting cranky.
It is the background. It is the background, right? It's the whole, the palette is the 25 square feet, whatever dimension that is, right? And there's a base color on that, and that will be consistent from sign to sign.
Yeah.
And then the tenant can come in and make.
Occupy the space above it, but not exceed outside of it, right in front of it. So there's the background, they can occupy in front of it, but not go outside of it. Right. That makes sense to me.
We're all the same.
Makes sense for you?
I'm not, Mike, can you put the screen on, please? So when I talk about the frame, I'm just, because when I look at this picture, I see the black, like whatever, aluminum border. Maybe it's not really there, but I didn't know if that was what the consistency would be.
That's what you're saying, right? Or no?
Well, the black on the rendering of the building is shown because it's the same color as the building. You wouldn't see it otherwise. So we haven't decided if it's going to have a black metal frame around it or what the background is. It's just going to
Okay.
be uniform background material.
Okay.
Because if
where
you,
the tenant puts the
if you
letter
go
in.
to the 2 by 12, you know, the longer one, you know, those are just shadow lines to make it pop.
Okay. So uniform background.
Yes.
But, right, so, just
Oh, boy.
reiterate, so everyone understands. There's going to
We're killing
be
this one.
material of that size that occupies a space, and they can work within it. And so that, okay, all right, that's great. I mean, it's just what we were talking about with the dental clinic earlier, is that something to set it off from, you know, you're not mounting, the mounts are gonna be consistent on this same type of background. Right. All right. Sorry, I get it, I'm just making sure.
We
I
like to
really
make
do.
sure we're all on the
The
same
1%
page with
left, I
signs.
got it.
I think that's important too, so.
Okay, so, and then to just piggyback on that, all of the signs are gonna be mounted, to the awning, and there'll be tiebacks to help support it, and there will be wash lighting. Can you just explain that a little bit? Are they just real small?
Yeah, the intent is to have small lights that would protrude off the face of the canopy and shine back up onto the sign itself.
So they come out the bottom and face up?
Yeah, it's very hard to see on our drawing. I don't know if they can zoom in, but
Yeah, I can.
right off the face of that canopy, they would come out and up and shine back
Oh, okay.
towards the.
And from a support structure, these are mounted in, there's not gonna be angle irons into the eave of the roof, the angle of the roof? Or
We
there
will
might be?
have some, for the signage,
Yeah,
yeah, there are gonna be some tiebacks, some supports, so the intent is to keep them uniform throughout and hidden.
okay.
Visibly, yes, you could probably see them from the side, but
Yeah,
they're also 11 feet up in the air.
Gotcha.
gonna be black or
It was
metal
blue.
or,
It'll
gonna blend
with
in,
the
right?
building and the roof, yeah,
As long as they're not fluorescent orange, I think we're good.
right.
Okay, so we got that one. Then the signage on the green building is very similar, I should say the east building. They just have two signs on the east elevation and two signs on the south elevation, and then a corner sign. But same kind of thing, there's a couple different options in size. The corner sign will be 2 feet by 9 feet, 8 inches, but the other ones will have that same variability. And then there is, you can see on this building, this is where, I'm gonna say it wrong, is it synthetic?
Synthetic.
Synthetic? Will be occupying that upper tenant space. So they are seeking their own 25 square foot signs up top. So when you look at the code based on the frontage and the building and road frontage, there's plenty of opportunity for signage, and this really is actually a pretty minimal for the size of buildings that are being proposed. So there shouldn't be any issues with size requirements, but as each tenant comes in, we will review the size of that particular tenant to make sure it's proportional to the frontage that they occupy. It should be okay.
So in that drawing you have right there, those two red lines coming from the top of the, over the clock, in those tenant signs on both sides of the building there, those represent the most amount of signage that's gonna be above the eave at the street level? So those two signs that say tenant,
Yes.
is there potential that there's going to be multiple signs of that type and size on each side of that building at that height? Or is this what you're asking for is for those, is that amount of signage on those sides of the building? So is it conceivable that instead of one on each side, you'd have four
No,
signs?
You're not gonna have four on each side, so I think synthetic, Dan, you can speak on behalf, but how much, do they take the top floor or top two?
So they're occupying, synthetics occupying the top 2 floors.
Right, so, no, I mean, they occupy the top two, those are both, for them.
So your sign program that you're asking for tonight says that signage, so there's those three tiers of windows in the top 3 floors. You have those two signs, and you're not asking for more signage above that street level.
That's what all the freestanding and window signage is.
Understand,
That's it.
okay. Just clarifying that we won't get one of those between every pair of windows.
Yes, no, that is correct.
All right, just.
And the tenant, I would say on the first office floor, where is their sign?
They would be on the monument.
Only
Like
on
the
the
others.
monument?
Yes.
Okay.
So the only reason it's synthetic, I mean, they
Yeah, I get
obviously
it.
leased out two
I get it.
floors, so.
Yep.
Cool.
Oh,
we have
very
a
good
small-
conversation.
You said the monument is going to be lit,
Ground lit.
ground lit, okay.
And then we have the little signage off to the sides of the windows.
He's gotta talk, you really need to talk.
Sorry, we have the little signs on either side of the windows that you mentioned already that would work for the upstairs tenants.
The directories.
So you get them at the street, you get them at the buildings. It's more wayfinding than anything for the office tenants to pull them into the building to the right spot.
They have, they're showing slight landscaping. There's not a lot of room out here, so, it will be somewhat minimal.
Good opportunity for some decorative stone.
The signs on the building on that face Genesee, on the corner, there'll be one sign there, and then on the south side, there'll be another sign at, what is it, above 3rd floor? Are those going to be lit?
That I can't answer, that would be a Kevin question, to be honest, but I think the intent would be, if they wouldn't be internally illuminated, if they are lit, it's gonna be similar to the retail tenants, where it's gonna be spotlights going up on the sign, but.
Something small.
So subtle lighting is a possibility there, just like it would match all the other tenant signs.
Right. Correct.
Any other questions from commissioners that want to talk more about these signs?
I do have a recommended motion to approve it as presented, but there is there's the typical condition. Well, actually, it's not typical, but individual tenant signage affixed to the building will need to be reviewed and approved when the individual operation is approved. I do have in here, if any illumination is proposed, it shall be presented to Plan Commission for review and approval. They did present the external signage. I was more concerned about the freestanding sign, and I don't know if you're comfortable with them commenting on the spotlights, or if you need anything additional.
I'd say I'd be concerned about the illumination on the side of the building signs above between the second and third stories on the corners. I'd like that to come back for approval. I don't think we have anything like that in the city.
No.
At that height.
Yeah, they will have to come back regardless.
Yeah, those are coming
Yeah.
back anyway.
For
Okay.
approval.
And is that something that we can just make it a,
Would that happen?
That's fine,
So
because it says they have to come back, and it says if any illumination is proposed, it shall be presented to Plan
Yeah,
Commission.
I think that's
So
fine.
that's
Right.
fine.
I think I'd leave that.
because that kind of then becomes tenant dependent and, what they want and.
Yep, I agreed. That sounds good. And I'll have to say, I've never seen a clock in a building that I like, aside from
You'll like this one.
Alan Bradley and Big Ben. Hard sell. I'm really ambivalent about this one, which is as good as you're going to get from me, but it looks appropriate.
I wish we had had a better picture of it, up close, what it would look like. It's really hard to tell on the blueprint what it's going to look like.
It is.
And each clock has a different face of its own, so it would have been nice to have a better picture of it.
If it's not right, I need a number to call.
One call, that's all? Is that the one you're looking for?
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan appearance of the clock, permanent signage, and multi-tenant sign as presented, contingent upon approval of any illumination presented to the Plan Commission for review and approval. Individual tenant signage affixed to the building will need to be reviewed and approved when the individual operation is approved.
I'll second. I'll second.
All righty, do we have any discussion? Hearing none.
Hold on, do you want the spotlight to come back too?
For what, the multi-tenant sign?
Yes.
Nope. I don't think that's necessary. That's not my intent of my motion.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Thank you, gentlemen. I think it's going to look really nice.
Thank you. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate what staff has been great to work with, and just want to thank you for that.
Absolutely. Lease out the last 10 to 30%, right?
Getting there.
We're getting there.
All right, good
It's
deal.
moving quick, and we've got to get them in to meet with staff.
Because otherwise they'll be in a rush, right? And then that's not good for anybody. Okay, 11 comprehensive plan zoning and ordinance revisions. A, discussion and possible action on text amendment to sections of Article 4, zoning district, Article 5, conditional uses, Article 10, administrative and penalties of the City of Delafield zoning ordinances, and Chapter 2, City of Delafield administrative ordinances. There you go, Amy.
Okay, so we've been talking about these amendments for months now. So I would just like to focus on some of the things that have changed, and I know we had the question about protests, so I'm trying to find that. It is in here. Okay, so under section 52,
What
290.
page is that, please?
In the packet?
Yes.
119.
Thank you.
So section 52-294 does talk about changes and amendments to the code, which could include zoning district amendments or, I guess, text amendments. And there is a section on protest. It has been changed so that statute, it's my understanding that it is a statute that is intended to limit the control of local communities. So to take that protest ability away unless it's being downsizing. There's another scenario that doesn't apply in the city of Delafield. So because we were making so many changes to these sections, the administration section, it was recommended that I bring back the code language for just downsizing. If you wanted to leave it in, you could leave it in up to that 2025 date. There is a League of Wisconsin Municipalities document that provides an overview of what that bill intends to mean. And it says, this new provision does not take effect until January 1st, 2025. This delayed effective date is intended to give municipalities time to update any local ordinances that require a now prohibited supermajority vote for proposed zoning amendments. The league encourages members to start this process now and work with your municipal attorney if needed to make any necessary changes. So it does say that the statute repealed, the legislature repealed a section in the statutes which required the 3/4 vote by the governing body to approve a proposed zoning amendment when a protest petition is filed. Although that protest petition was eliminated, the league opined that municipalities could still enact the ordinance for, opined that municipalities could still enact local ordinances that establish a protest petition process because nothing in the law prohibited such ordinances. Under this new act, the state law now prohibits such a process from being established at the local level. And it only requires approval by a simple majority of a quorum of the members elect. However, the 2/3 vote may still be required for downsizing and for zoning amendments with the airport protest petition, which you don't have to deal with.
So the way we rewrote this was the most restrictive way that we could under the new state law.
Right, so we did keep in the downsizing because the state law allows that scenario to take place. Not every community has to keep that in, but we have the ability to keep it
So
in.
downsizing means the use of property from a more intense use to a less intense use, saying that you
Correct.
can't. Okay, so this is kind of the opposite of the way it was actually presented to the city in the past. Like Lynn mentioned earlier, it's only happened once that anyone can remember. Okay.
And I think, this is part of a larger bill that includes accommodations for housing. And, there are some areas where developers were coming in, they felt that they had their approvals and, or that they were meeting codes, and then it was.
Protest came in?
Well, I don't know that was the case, but that they were having a hard time getting through a process that they felt was granted to them. And I don't know if that's the reason behind this, but this whole bill is based on accommodations for residential housing developments.
So it's not for commercial? Is that what it's
Well,
saying?
I'm just saying, like, the other sections, there's residential housing there's other residential development pieces. This doesn't have to do with residential, commercial, agricultural. It's just simply that protest is taken away.
So we can't make it any more restrictive than it is, and it's only downsizing.
Yeah, so the way to, so if we were to not do this, we'd be leaving it open as is for a year with a possible thought that the state would change it in the interim.
That's not gonna.
No, I understand. No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I
reason
mean,
I'm
right
saying-
now, the way it's written right now, the option would be to delay, but, then you have to, we're amending the code right now, and then we have to remember to go in and amend the code before 2025, but that would be your option.
Yeah, no, I get it. And so that anyone wants just my recollection of what's happened in recent history, this is probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago. There was a development proposed that was moving along to allow some zoning changes in the southeast corner of 94 and Highway C. And it passed through the process with a simple majority, and the landowners adjacent to it, as far as the rezoning goes, went through this protest process, and then it failed to get 5 of the 7 votes necessary on the council, so it got
Which is
rejected.
a supermajority.
Which is the 3/4 majority. So in other words, it had to be a really great idea to do it, to convince 5 people on the council, as opposed to being a pretty good idea to convince 4 people on the council. Kind of, that's boiling it down to a pretty simple thing. But so, could really tick off like 1 alderperson and 1 more, and you could lose. Or you could just make 1 person miserable in their district and say, yeah, it's going forward. So all I can say is it's happened once. I like the protection it provides, because I think you should be able to, in rezoning for a development, convince a supermajority. It's a great idea if there's enough people that are upset. But if the state's saying we can't do it, I'm not sure what we're how we'd be able to buck this if.
And the other thing is, if it has to be passed by January 1st, 2025, we would be bringing, and let's say we did delay it, it would be brought forth in like October, to start the process. And so we're really, by the time this gets passed, it's November, you're talking about a 11-month window where you'd be leaving it alone.
Yeah, I like the way it was before, and just unfortunately, we can't, it's just not an option, and this is the most restrictive that we can make it, which doesn't seem likely to be used, but, I mean, it's there in case it would need to be used to get the neighbors to have the most control over what happens next to them. And as far as alternatives, I mean, based on the research the city attorney's done and the planner's done, we haven't come up with an alternative, but if an alternative was something we could work on in the future, always come back and relook at it if we can come up with an alternative. But as of right now, we don't have one that I'm aware of.
Okay, that part?
Yeah,
Moving on?
I'll just comment that if we were to try to snooze this and wait a year, I don't think it'd do us as much good as just putting this in place. And if we wanted to try to figure out a way around it, it wouldn't apply to this anyway, because this is only in the instance of a downsize. We'd be possibly looking at something that we could enact to enable the protest that went on before in the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
unless you're
All right.
ready to write it right now.
I don't have it right now. No, I don't know where to go.
Okay. The other, let's see. So 52-110, we had talked about the permitted accessory uses. And that is, if you look at the ordinance, that's in your, actually, so I made a couple of red line changes, and that's why you all have a hard copy. No changes were made to this section, but if you go to 52-110, from the last month's meeting, we talked about, instead of just saying permitted accessory uses in all residential districts, to list out the applicable districts. So there's a long list here of applicable districts. I guess the only question I would have on this list, unless you have some, would be I have included the A1 district, because that is still only I think it's a 3-acre minimum. And so even that district would be subject to the 2% provision. And we did talk about that last month. I just wanted to make sure everybody's okay with that. Okay, and then,
I have a question on the boathouse.
yes.
It says 1 per residential lot.
Mhm.
What about square footage? Does that relate to the garages, or?
There's a whole nother boathouse section.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is just listing out what is acceptable. And then going to the 2%, so what Plan Commission did decide is 2% at the last meeting. So it wouldn't be the 3%. Those were my notes from when we started the discussion. And it's.
And the current code said 3%?
The current code is actually, anything over 1,200 square feet goes to Plan Commission. This is a cap, and there is no Plan Commission exception.
Okay,
It's a
at 2%.
variance, which would be very difficult to obtain. So right now, we've had a couple in the last year where people have far exceeded 2% or 1,200 square feet and have gotten plan commission approval, where this wouldn't allow that opportunity to occur anymore. And what it says is it shall not exceed 600 square feet accessory structures, the aggregate. So the combination of accessory structures can't exceed 600 square feet on lots less than 14,000 square feet, or 750 square feet, or 2%, whichever is greater, on lots 14,000 square feet or larger.
Which
It's on
page?
page 9 of the ordinance, if you want to look for 52-110. And that's what we've
So,
talked
Amy, on
about
that,
at the last,
The question that was brought up, if somebody came to us with a 5-acre lot and wanted to put a large structure that was at 2% and much larger than their primary home, could we, for other reasons, say that doesn't fit, that doesn't make sense? No? Or do you, or because it's compliant, you couldn't really legally do that?
you don't have any provisions in place to regulate that. We brought it up a couple of months ago. I mean, there are some communities that do. They limit the amount based on the size of the house.
But to answer your question, the way the code's written, unless for, noise or some other
Yeah.
type of
Yeah.
reason that we would come up with, I mean, they pretty much would be headed towards approval at anything less than 2% or less.
Okay.
And it's pretty, so a 2-acre lot, that total is 1,742 square feet for maximum outbuilding size. In Delafield in particular, or home sizes are usually bigger than that. If you're gonna have a space of land that accommodates a structure of that size. That may not always be the case, but, so that was that provision. We added all of those districts in. And then we did remove model homes from the conditional use section. So this is actually, a section where I had, so if you go to section 10 of the ordinance in your hands, I removed temporary model homes and sale offices as a conditional use permit. We decided those are gonna be reviewed as part of like a subdivision development, site plan review when a development comes in. I put in there churches, rectory, parsonages, parish houses, because they were in another section of the code that we were going to delete. I'm recommending that we not make those changes at this time. The attorney and I and staff would like to further research churches. So I'm just instead asking that you put reserved in there, so you'll remove model homes
And this
in.
has to be in the motion, right?
Yep, well, I'm just, in the motion, I'm asking you that you adopt the ordinance with changes presented at tonight's meeting. To keep it that simple. So anyway, section 10, I'm just asking that you put reserved. If you don't put reserved and you delete a statement, then we have to change the numbering for the rest of the ordinance past that, so we don't like to do that. And then, also, we had, I'm gonna put this up on the screen. 52-109, which is permitted uses in all districts. That was the, in all districts, you can have railroad right-of-ways, passenger depots, not including switching storage, freight yards, and siding, and then the churches, by a conditional use. We were gonna remove that because we were gonna take out the whole railroad thing and put the churches in this CU section. Again, for now, we'd like to just leave that whole section, and we'll come back to that at a later date. So that would be, if you're looking at the revised ordinance, that'll just be removing completely section 8 from the ordinance.
Removing, not reserving?
Removing completely section 8. Because what it'll do is it'll just keep 52-109 in the ordinance by removing it from the ordinance to go to council. It'll leave it in the adopted ordinance we have currently, zoning ordinance. Then I did insert those minimum lot size requirements in all the districts when lots are served by septic systems. So the only thing I did is I excluded them in districts where there were no lots served by a septic system. But otherwise, you'll see The codes or the district provisions read a little bit differently, but for the most part, it'll say something like minimum lot size area shall be 7,900 square feet unless otherwise required by section 5219C if the lot is served by a private septic system. So that gets us all, when we're reviewing the code, sends us to that section that requires a minimum of 5 acres for a lot served by a septic system. Does that make sense? And then we added that provision in chapter 2. So that's an administration chapter of the city's ordinances, which excludes special exceptions as a function of the Board of Appeals to match the proposed language in the zoning code.
I have a couple.
Amy, in that section, and this is just clarification and understanding on my part, it says that the special exception only applies to non-conforming lots.
It does, and it's, the way, so a couple of years ago, we wrote in the, well, maybe it was last year, I don't remember. We wrote in the code that you could get a special exception from Plan Commission for non-conforming lots, and then also there's a provision for lake frontage, minimum lake frontage requirements. Those are the only references to special exceptions, and they both require Plan Commission approval, not Board of Appeals approval. So the intent here is to then go to chapter 2 and remove the reference that special exceptions would go to Board of Appeals, because we don't have any circumstances where they do.
Well, my question is, so take a 10,000 square foot lake lot, which
Yeah.
is the minimum lot. That wouldn't qualify for a special exception.
If it was less than, what do you,
No, if my understanding is
oh, to
that-
create a new lot?
well, my understanding is I think it's R2, it's where I live.
Oh.
If you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you can build based on the square footage and so forth, and if the lot's less than that, then you have to get a special exception. Or show
you
a
have-
hardship.
You have to get a special exception if you can't meet the standards, like if you can't meet the setbacks floor area ratio. And then the code says that you can, if it's non-conforming because of size, you might be able to exceed floor area ratio up to a certain extent. If it's non-conforming to width, then you can exceed.
So my question, it's just a theoretical one. So for the 10,000 square foot lot,
Yep.
you can't apply for a special exception, which to me suggests that if you have a legitimate hardship, too bad, so sad, but if you had a lot for 9,900 square feet, you can go and request the exception that you couldn't when you had the 10,000 square foot.
That's right. We did put provision, and we talked about that when we adopted that language. We did put provisions in, though, that you can't ever exceed the numbers that would be allowed for the smallest conforming lot. So you wouldn't ever get that disparity. But that's true. There is you can go up to a certain point,
It just
and
seemed
then
in-
it's a variance.
It just seemed in theory that if a person had a hardship, why wouldn't they have the same remedy potential to deal with that hardship versus having an arbitrary, if it's over 10, too bad, so sad, if it's under 10?
Oh, hardship is, anybody can apply for a variance and test the hardship provisions of the statutes. Anyone can do that. We're just talking about a special exception, which is a circumstance that may be appropriate if the Plan Commission deems that it's reasonable. I mean, there's provisions in the code, I don't know exactly what they say, that it's compatible with the neighborhood and architecturally desirable and doesn't have drainage impact. I mean, there's certain standards. It's different than a variance, though. Anybody, whether it's conforming or non-conforming, can theoretically apply for a variance and prove a hardship test.
Okay.
Try.
Try.
The language seemed to suggest you couldn't do that.
No, we're just dealing with special exception. It's just the special exception term, which is different than variance.
Okay.
Question. Let's go back to the buildings. I want to understand this. When it says you can have a maximum of 2 accessory buildings, is that 2% that you have in there worked into the overall 2 buildings?
It's aggregate, which means the combination of
Yeah,
both.
combination, okay. just so I understand.
So you
that.
might have a garage and a shed.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so if you have a ranch on a 3-acre lot with an attached garage, that means you could have a building that's like
2,600.
25 feet wide and 100 feet long without plan commission approval.
On how many acres?
A 3-acre lot,
3-acre lot, yeah, on a 3-acre lot.
That's a big building.
you could have a 25-foot wide, 100-foot long building if you have an attached garage. I think that's a little out of control.
Well, wait, an attached garage is kind of,
It's not an accessory building. I'm
Right.
saying,
I just
I'm
wanted to
saying this is allowing someone, as somebody pointed out earlier, a pretty big building on a relatively small lot. I mean, I have 3-acre lots in my neighborhood. I have a 5-acre lot with a attached garage ranch. It's an odd-shaped lot on Hillcrest Avenue. A 5-acre lot would allow someone to have a 200-foot by 20-foot wide building, as long as it meets the setbacks. And without any approval, just like, here you go. I mean, we don't have any architectural oversight on a building in someone's backyard.
yeah, so a 2% on 3 acres is 2,613
I know-
square.
I'm just saying that in my neighborhood, I've got 2 5-acre lots. Both of them have ranches with attached garages, and they're surrounded by RE1 and RE2 houses that have, on average, 1.1 acre lots because of the how the subdivisions were put together. I think we need to inject a maximum, just simply saying that in residential lots, because we're including ag in here, right, for 52-110. I think we need to add, like the first thing should say that aggregate square footage of accessory buildings, greater than, let's say, 2,000 square feet require a plan commission approval. That gives a lot of latitude. 2,000 square feet is a big building too.
But if we do it, if I understood you correctly, if we do it that way, then the planning commission's allowed to approve up to the full 2%.
Correct.
On
That's
a
what I'm
3-acre
saying.
lot.
That's what I'm saying.
The
is that-
history of the planning commission is they approve it.
Well, they'd have a hard time with me on it approving it in my neighborhood for the lots I'm talking about.
Yeah, well,
What size
I don't
lots
know.
are you talking about?
Talking about, I mean, I can bring them up. There's
I kind of
there's
like the idea of the
3-acre
reduction down to 1% concept personally.
From like
Yeah.
1 to 3 acres.
Yeah. Without-
And
so-
then 3 to 5 would be 2%.
Yeah, for
Well,
residential lots.
3 to 5 is
So
2%
be
big.
'cause,
though.
like-
I've got 3-acre lots all around me.
Yeah, 2% on a 1 acre lot is 871 square feet. That's a little more reasonable. It's the bigger the lot size, I mean, it starts to, the square footage of the building starts to get much bigger. But at 1 acre,
I mean, I like the ability to prove certain things when they fit in certain areas and subdivisions as opposed to when they don't. I mean, I'm not saying that we just have this magic formula, but there's certain areas of the city where there's lots that you might have the smallest 5-acre or 3-acre lot in your area. I mean, you just might be off the side of a subdivision or up against a highway or something, and it's like, okay, great. But
So 2 examples is the lot you're talking about in your residential subdivision, and then we're talking either a 3 or 5 acre lot over on Nagawicka Road, which is set up for horses, and they want a horse barn, right?
Yeah,
Two
and I
very
can-
different realities,
I can
yet the
say
lot
by-
size is the same and they're both residential.
By me, my lot is 3 acres, but my neighbor to the west is 18, and the neighbor to the north is 6 acres.
I mean, a large outbuilding in your property would probably just blend right in.
You wouldn't see it, because it's all woods.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just do something that over 1% requires planning commission approval up to a 2% max? Why couldn't you just put that in there for residential? What's the downside to
for
that?
what, 1%?
If you
For 3 acres or?
For any residential.
carte blanche, make
Yeah.
that statement,
Because
Did
you're gonna
anything
get
over-
a lot, so that's 435 square feet on a 1 acre lot. You're gonna get a lot of outbuildings.
Yeah.
Right, Scott?
It's not big enough.
That's just a two-car garage.
Right.
What's not big
That's
enough?
nothing.
400 square foot
is-
accessory building on a 1 acre lot.
That's a 20 by
So
20.
you're saying it's not big enough, and Amy's saying we're gonna get a lot of them.
25, 600.
That this, plan commission's gonna get a lot of requests.
Oh, requests, yeah.
Because that's on the small side of a building.
When should an accessory building be larger than the principal building?
Yeah, there you go. I have a perfect example of that in my neighborhood. It was built years ago, and they didn't have the house built yet, but they put up a pole building, and it was right in line with the neighbor next door's house. So they're looking at this pole building, and to this day, they still do. And it's for a commercial business.
Would you get horse barns that would be bigger than a?
But horses, you have to have a certain number of acres. So that doesn't apply really to 3 acres or less. And that's really what we're worried about. I don't think we're worried about the 5 acre parcel or the 8 acre parcel.
Well, no, but the provisions apply in certain districts, and there are going to be big lots in those districts.
Seems to me,
You can do, like, I don't have it in front of me, but that first meeting, I brought different communities provisions. Like the Village of Summit, you can't have an outbuilding more than 60% of the size of floor area of your house without plan commission approval. I will tell you the same thing happens, then they go to plan commission and they all get approved.
That's what I'm trying to, I mean, maybe that's the way it has to be, but.
I think town of Delafield, they might have a little bit more of a tiered system.
seems to me you need to integrate some language rather than just use a percent, to Ken's point. You know, if you're on a 3 acre lot and you have 5,000 square foot homes that are worth $2.5 million, you don't want somebody to put up a pole barn on a lot like that, for obvious reasons. Whereas an area that's not that, that's 2 acres or 3.
But it might not be a pole barn. It might be a very nice accessory building.
Well, that's my point. I think once you start using percentages, you've hand-tied yourself. And I think it matters what the nature of what's being built on these properties.
We'll just take the one on Vedelson Road. We just had 2 planning commissions ago, right? A big, long, I forget how many acres that thing was, 5 acres.
Yeah.
Everybody has a standard split level or ranch on it, and they got all this open land in the back, and we let them build a outbuilding that's, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like 4 times the size of his house.
Well, the one last month didn't get that.
Why wouldn't you just pick a square foot number? Any accessory building greater than so many square feet needs approval.
That's what it was.
That's where we're at right
That's
now.
how it read, 1,200 square feet.
1,200 square feet is where we're at right now.
Where'd the 2% come in then?
We were looking
It
to
was-
change that,
So,
1,200.
a couple months ago, I brought several different examples of different ways to regulate it, and this was the method that, at the time, was recommended. We can go, I mean, I have those notes still, I could bring them back
Is
at
it as
next.
simple as just instead of over-engineering and overthinking it, just anything over 1,200 needs approval? Is it that simple?
Well, that's what it is now.
Yeah, that's what it is today, and they all get
The
approved.
concern is they're all getting approved, so what
I missed
is,
those meetings, by the way. Just for the record, I wasn't here.
and not
I'm
only
quite
do
sure
they
you
all.
voted for every one of them.
Not only do they not only do they all get approved, they're much bigger than what's allowed. They have been, the ones that have been coming in are much bigger than what this new code would allow. I mean, they're well over, the last 2 or 3 have been well over 3,000 square feet, I think.
Well, I think if you're going to stay with a percentage, and what I'm hearing, what the interest is of the committee, and I think the citizens, you should go with the smallest percent that's practical, and then require them to come in for approval to see if it fits.
But then Plan Commission has to develop standards that you apply, and we really don't. We wing it. And so You know, everyone presents their case, they're all very nice people, it's all for horses, and then they move and 5
And
years
the reason could be
later-
anything under the sun, it's
Right.
good enough.
But I think you can do that with language. You can describe what the spirit and intent of it is. You do that in other codes, you can do it in this code.
Should larger accessory buildings have architectural standards?
Right, you could put I mean, and that is what
Building
they,
materials,
Yeah.
maybe no more metal.
Yes.
Above a certain square footage.
You
So
could
it's-
do
if it's
that.
available, it's gonna cost more money, but I think it's maybe in the community's best interest.
and it kind of depends on the area. In some areas, maybe it is okay to have metal, in other areas, it's not.
Sometimes you can't see it from the
That's the
road.
hard part. Usually codes will say something like, Plan Commission can review the architectural design and it needs to be compatible with the existing structures on the property or the resident, have similar materials as the residents or otherwise be compatible with the neighborhood. We can come up with something if you want to go that route.
I personally like that because we have enough diversity that if we try and get into legislating too much detail, there'll be 6 more meetings, right? Before we get there.
Well, this is a
We're on
particularly
4.
hard one.
We're on meeting 4.
I think you need to go with language like that.
Okay, so are you saying language,
Buildings over a certain size
Yep.
require that language.
Over what we had before,
Yeah, so is
1,200 square feet require.
do you still want a cap? Do you still want to have this cap that's currently proposed
Too
and
large.
too harsh?
Too large.
It's too large.
Oh,
think
but if it's over 1,200 square feet, is there, because this new language would restrict some properties to less than 1,200 square feet. It goes both ways. And then on other properties so we've had a couple recently come in with well over 3,000 square feet. Do you want to cap it then?
I think if you,
Even
I think
with
if you
language.
allow the 2% cap, which we somehow came up as reasonable a while back, we can see how we can test drive that between now and the next meeting to see how that negative consequences or good consequences happen.
And
So
we
if
can
there-
look at adding the architectural controls
Yeah, that's what I'm.
portion to
Do
the
both-
code.
Do both, like say anything over X number of square feet, so 1,200 is a pretty big building still on some lots for not having any kind of panache.
What's typical, Scott?
1,200 is standard big, and for municipalities in the area, not many approve larger than that.
At all, okay.
Right. Why does someone need a 3,000 square foot accessory building?
Because he wants it.
Yeah.
That's
For what?
the only reason they have to
Got
bring it.
6
We always
boats.
approve it.
There's the
Well, I think when I came in on that,
It is, let's be
Yeah.
honest.
So if you said over, like if you said a building over 800 square feet needs architectural approval, then, you've got a 20 by 40 building, that's a decent, what is it, this room?
800 square feet's a 3-car garage.
Yeah, so anything over that requires architectural approval, so bring the 1,200 down to 800 and then put the max at 2% and see how that feels, right? I think that sounds like a,
So could you still get approval of a pole barn over? when
as
you
long as
say
it doesn't,
architectural?
as long as it doesn't get to above 2% of your lot square
Thinking
footage.
of my neighbor's 18-acre lot.
He's grandfathered.
And we say,
2% on 18 acres is pretty big.
But when you say architectural control, he's got a pole barn up there, and a lot of people with huge lots like that would not want to go with a $100,000 building, want a $20,000 or $30,000 building.
Well, it probably fits where he's at.
It does.
Yeah, so that's where the.
That's where the
what
form
kind
and
of
fit
architectural
costs.
approval
Okay,
does
that's
it
my
take?
question.
Yeah, that's the discretion of, if someone wants to say, it's like, I'll never see it, no one will ever see it, but we still want to make it brick, that's just people that I don't know on this board. Right? I don't want to live in that
answers my
city,
question.
right?
Yeah.
That's what
On this, is there any restriction on height? Because I've
just
seen,
the code, which is,
25 feet to the ridge in most of those zoning districts, and 15 feet to the ridge in one or two of those districts. I don't think we're gonna have a problem on the 8 acres, 18 acres, it's the 3 acres, it's the 4 acres, where I think you're gonna have most of the conflict.
Okay.
Okay, well, what we can do, I'll bring back some ideas with Scott.
But we're gonna approve this that as it's written, and the plan is to add to it?
Oh,
Is that what I
Can
thought?
we just-
I thought
I
that's
was
what I
gonna
understood.
strike
Strike
section
this.
9.
Yeah, strike this out,
We can
come back.
strike section 9
Or we could,
and look at it next month.
and try to rewrite the whole thing again.
Section 9, which is the whole permitted
Okay.
accessory uses and structures, right?
Yep.
And I'm not trying to make it take longer. I thought generally we agreed that the caps in here were good, but they needed more work. Is that not what I heard?
We're saying the 2% is too big of a building.
And
Right.
A cap alone isn't sufficient to achieve the purpose of the city's
Right.
interests.
So we don't, I thought we were saying we would approve the caps and then next month bring in another possible change. You're just saying take the whole
I-
section back?
Let's just do it all at once.
Okay.
Yeah, because it'll actually get messy in the
Someone,
whole-
is someone got an
Okay.
application in that we don't know about?
No,
One into the wire.
no, absolutely not.
Tomorrow, though.
I know.
I was just trying to make
my
it smooth.
plans done.
Apparently not a good idea.
We're meeting in
We
November.
had an applicant last month, he'll be coming back, he applied before this code would go through anyway, so he's under the old code no matter what.
Get your pole barn
Okay,
request in
so
tomorrow.
then, just for purposes of the motion, if you do choose to recommend that council adopt the ordinance that was revised and discussed at tonight's meeting, you would want to remove section 8 and section 9 from the proposed ordinance and add that section 10 is, the language would be reserved.
What does that mean?
Just a spot holder.
So so we are taking out temporary model homes from the CU, but we're reserving the section, we're not removing it completely,
For the numbering reasons she explained earlier.
yeah. Otherwise, we gotta renumber the code.
And then whoever's looking to make that motion, I have a request. On page 2, page 3, page 4, page 12, where the word hardship is included in the wording, I'd like that to be bolded. So that people that read the code and are trying to apply it to themselves, that it's abundantly clear that hardship is the focus of what they need to do when they go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Because that's what you do when you go to Board of Zoning Appeals, you have to prove a hardship. I just want it to be, I think it'll help them to prepare or decide if they even want to go, if they focus on that word hardship. And I think by bolding it, we make them focus on it.
Okay.
You may wanna make that part subject to attorney review, because there may be.
Just bolding?
Well, they're just, because titles are bolded in there in some cases, there might, I don't know, I'm just saying, there may be reasons to or to not do that.
Sure.
Underlined.
That's probably worse.
Bolding the,
All of them
dependent
have
upon
different
attorney
purposes.
review.
It's either there or it's not. yeah.
The whole thing's subject to attorney review anyway.
Yeah. So. Section 10.
All right, who is going to take the risk? Ed, I saw
All
you
right.
writing.
All right, I will
I was writing
make a
too.
motion. Recommend common council adopt the enclosed draft revision ordinance, subject to these: removal section 8, remove section 9, section 10, add the word reserved, and on pages 2, 3, 4, and 12, the word hardship found on those pages, to bold those letters, subject to attorney review.
Is there a second?
Second.
You got that motion?
Can I clarify? Section 10, you had said add reserve in place of the language that's currently in there. In place of churches, rectories, parsonages, parish houses, and synagogues in the public and semi-public use district.
You want that in the motion?
All right.
Just clear.
I will clarify that for section 10, where it will say, where it says churches, rectories, parsonages, parish houses, synagogues in a public and semi-public use district.
And I agree with that with my second.
Thank you.
Caught up with that? Okay. All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay. 11B, acknowledge, update zoning and land use map, plan maps that are reflective of recent amendments that have been enacted by the Common Council.
So I put hard copies because I figured it would be hard to see on the screen. The zoning map and land use plan map have just been updated to include in all of the recent amendments over the last few years. So unless you notice anything of issue, I would send these off to council for acknowledgement, and then we would print copies for City Hall.
Yay! The mayor's been waiting for 2 years for printed copies in City Hall. All of our maps are dated 2/18.
You want 'em?
I have one, but it's really small.
Do these show floodplains or no?
Right now, I do not believe floodplains are on the zoning maps. There's a conservancy district, which is reflective of some of the floodplains. We have talked about incorporating those layers on these maps, but that'll have to be done as at a separate time with a public hearing. These don't really require a public hearing because the changes have already gone through public hearings. It's just putting them on map format.
You're basically just acknowledging that you saw the maps and you assume them to be correct per the planner's commitment that they are.
And if they're not, they'll be corrected.
And they're always changing. As soon as we do something,
Yeah.
in 3 months, it'll be out of date again. But we haven't had an updated one since 2018 that we've printed.
And you'll know, like, Delafield Parkway, for example, that was rezoned to R4, but it's subject to the development being approved. And I didn't want to, I was thinking about putting it on there with a note that it's subject to approval, but we'll just wait because the lot boundaries are going to change anyway.
Yeah, it was the only thing I was looking at. The rest looks good to me. So do you need a head nod? I acknowledge.
No, we need a formal vote, I believe, I was told.
I'll move to acknowledge acceptance of the City of Delafield updated zoning map and 2030 land use map.
I'll second.
Sorry.
Who won? Crystal, you picking?
No, thank you.
I'll say Laura.
Laura, go for it.
Okay. Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, 11, report of city officials. I'll refer you to any correspondence that was in the packet. B, planner. Anything special?
Nope.
Building inspector, great report coming. I can feel it.
Nothing to report.
Oh,
Nice.
That's a great one.
okay. 12, planning commission meeting dates and deadlines. Number 1, regular meeting November 29th, 2023. Number 2, regular meeting submittal deadline is November 1st, 2023. Seeing no further business, we are now adjourned at 9:04. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming.
you're pretty darn close to it.
It's good to see you back. No, it was helpful. It always is, quite frankly, for a long time.
Okay. What do I have?
For a period of time, you were the city planner.